Alright, this is Block 2, Section 4, Teddy Roosevelt. Teddy Roosevelt is one of the most popular American presidents in history. It has the very strange situation of being equally liked by both Democrats and Republicans. Both liberal Democrats and conservative Republicans find stuff to like about Theodore Roosevelt, the 26th president. Roosevelt was born into a wealthy family in New York City. He was a sickly child. He had asthma. He missed a lot of school. He stayed at home studying nature and plants and little fuzzy creatures and things like that. When he was about 12 years old, he kind of got out of bed one day and decided that he was sick and tired of being weak and puny and bullied and beat up, and he started working out and embraced a strenuous athletic life. Difficult physical activity, rock climbing and running and boxing and things like that, and he became a sportsman, and he was kind of the first politician to really get behind the concept of, exercise and a strenuous routine. He was an outdoorsman. He wrote a book called The Naval War of 1812, which established his professional reputation as a historian. He wrote a lot of books on hunting. He wrote books on the outdoors, current events, the history of the American frontier. And he was kind of having a regular sort of life as a wealthy New York gentleman until in 1884 his wife and his mother died on the same day. And that was a big blow to Teddy. He left politics, he left the Navy Department, he left kind of everything behind, and he went to live out on the frontier. And he built himself a log cabin in the middle of nowhere, North Dakota. I've been there, it's pretty cool. And he became a rancher and a farmer, living out there by himself, I guess kind of collecting his thoughts, collecting his, everything that from the ruins of the deaths in his life. He restored himself out in the Dakotas, in North Dakota, and he came back home ready to kind of continue his life, pick up his life where it had left off. He ran for mayor of New York City. And when he lost the mayoral election, he became commissioner of the New York City Police and took charge of that and kind of turned the New York Police Department into a professional force. He was a leader in civil service reform, things that you should actually be qualified for the government job that you have. He was the Assistant Secretary of the Navy in William McKinley's administration, and a constant proponent of American power abroad and American interests abroad. He was an expansionist and imperialist, and thought that America should spread itself to the four corners of the world. When the Spanish-American War broke out, Teddy Roosevelt left government again and put together a volunteer regiment of cavalry known as the Rough Riders, and as we have seen earlier, Teddy Roosevelt, riding at the front of his men, played a key role in the defeat of the Spanish army at the Battle of Santiago in 1898 with his famous charge up San Juan Hill. Coming home, a big war hero, Roosevelt was elected governor of New York in 1898, and his action and his desire for civil service reform and pissed off a lot of people in the government of New York, and in order to kind of get rid of him, they worked for his promotion. They said, "Hey, Teddy, we have a great idea for you. Why don't you become Vice President of the United States?" And in 1900, he was nominated to run with William McKinley for the vice presidency. He took to the campaign to support McKinley with his typical energy. He worked hard to re-elect President McKinley on a platform of high protective tariffs, the gold standard, imperialism, abroad, prosperity at home. I mean, who could be against things like that? And he was a young man. He was 40 years old. He was 41 years old when he was elected vice president in 1900, and a lot of the Republicans in New York smiled and said, "Hey, we got rid of him. He's the vice president now, and the vice president is pretty much the most powerless person in American government." And then, of course, President McKinley went and got himself assassinated. And at the age of 42, the youngest person to ever hold the office, Teddy Roosevelt became president of the United States. And those New York, bosses in the Republican Party in New York looked at the situation and says, "My God, that cowboy is president of the United States now." He became the first American president to really push for an American presence on the world stage. He became the first American president interested in environmental protection. The vastness of the National Parks program is all due to Teddy, or in large part due to Teddy Roosevelt. His policies were characterized by the slogan, "Speak softly and carry a big stick," that your actions should speak louder than your words. He was the force, as we're going to see shortly, behind the completion of the Panama Canal. He sent the Great White Fleet, as we will see, on a tour around the world to demonstrate American power, and he is one of he is one of three American presidents to win the Nobel Peace Prize, and President Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt, won the Nobel Peace Prize for negotiating an end to the Russo-Japanese War. We're going to talk a lot more about Teddy Roosevelt when we talk about imperialism. We talk about what the United States did after the Spanish-American War, and with his domestic legacy of trust-busting and the destruction of monopoly, or the partial destruction of monopoly, will be a topic for Block 3. One of the most important, I would say, without a doubt, definitely a top 10 important president in American history, and a lot of people might even rank him higher than that. As I said, popular with Republicans and Democrats, conservatives and liberals. One of the coolest guys. He liked to go on African big game hunting safaris, and when that was kind of a cool thing to do. He volunteered to lead a regiment in World War I, and President Wilson, who hated him, turned him down, said, "Don't go." But one of the neatest guys to ever become the President of the United States. There he is, Teddy Roosevelt, 26th President.